Have you ever played a game that's really close to a thing that you want, but it's just not quite there and it just ends up being a little disappointing? Well, that's this game, at least for me. Pagan Online is an ARPG where you kill stuff, you loot stuff, you craft stuff, you do what you usually do in these kinds of games, but the movement and character systems are what set it apart. For movement, you use WASD. No mouse move here. The mouse is for aiming abilities and picking up loot. And instead of traditional ARPG classes, Pagan has specific characters I'd say are closer to MOBA characters that have their own specific kits and niches for interacting with the core gameplay loop. There's a hub called the Pantheon where you do all your activities and choose missions to go on. These missions come in a few varieties. There are story battles, which is basically the campaign, where you get talked at while going from point A to point B and occasionally getting stopped to do combat. There are missions, which are very similar to Warframe missions, with objectives like survive from enemies, defend a thing, kill a specific guy, that kind of stuff. All of these end up playing out very similarly though. You walk until the game cuts you off and spawns a bunch of enemies in your face, at which point you roll your face on the keyboard and try not to die until the game decides you've killed enough to go on to the next encounter. Oh yeah, and there's loot too. Each hero has 7 abilities to deal with these encounters, 3 of which, a primary attack, a secondary attack, and a mobility ability that are free to use aside from a cooldown, and 4 abilities that cost magic, mana, rage. They cost the blue bar. During missions, there are challenges that you can complete for extra experience. When you reach the end of a mission, a big chest spawns that has a bunch of loot, and then you go back to the hub and get another mission. And maybe you want to craft a thing, or upgrade some abilities, or try to figure out which piece of gear actually has the stats you want because there's a million pluses and minuses and you don't know what's going on. That's the basic gameplay loop here. And it's so close to being really fun, but there's just some dumb stuff holding it back. The biggest one to me is melee sucks, and combat is kind of jank. Playing a melee character in this game is not great. Abilities just don't chain together well. You have to wait until whatever animation is currently playing to end before you can press another button, and this gets a little frustrating when you're expected to dodge a lot of attacks. Combine this with no cancel cast, and it just feels plain unresponsive at times. King Witch, one of the characters I was playing, has multiple abilities with long animations that are impossible to cancel out of, and a lot of enemies can start and finish their attacks before I'm done doing my super slam. These abilities don't give any super armor or invulnerability either, so you can start a cast, get interrupted, and the ability goes on cooldown. On top of this, your M1, your basic attack, also locks you in place. You cannot move and basic attack at any speed. You are feet firmly planted in the ground. And his second M1 takes what feels like a decade to pull off. This can lead to you getting punched around the map and CC'd for 9 hours, which is its own problem, and it kind of kills the momentum the combat has built up. But I digress. So melee sucks. How is range? Well, the first character I unlocked was a ranged character. Let's look at his M1. He shoots a forked lightning type spell that hits multiple targets, and he can move while casting it. What? Why does the ranged dude get to move and cast, but the melee dude is stuck being a freaking tree? Actually, this ranged character Lucian can move and cast all of his abilities at the same time. Hey? I was actually losing my desire to play the game with King Witch, but then I unlocked this dude and I was like, whoa, I can actively dodge and spam abilities at the same time? This is so much better. But then Lucian has this thing where he can make a circle of lightning that makes all the enemies in it blinded, which makes all of their attacks miss. Lucian's passive is that whenever you cast a spell, all of his other spells get their cooldown reduced. So if you place a blinding circle down and then mash your other buttons, you can put another blinding circle down before the first one is gone, making you almost unkillable by normal attacks from anything inside the circle. I think this character might just be borked, I don't know, I've only played the 2 characters, but I'll get to that later. Another gripe I have about the overall combat might be kind of dumb, but every ability seems like this big area of effect thing. Lots of times in the game, you're left fighting 1 or 2 elite enemies, and I just feel like I'm using the wrong spell on them because there's just no single target abilities in the game. I don't really know if that's a legitimate complaint, but it's just kind of weird, you know? My final problem with the main gameplay is that when you enter combat, the map shuts you in an area and then spawns enemies in. Sometimes this sucks. It'll shut you in a tiny area and then spawn monsters literally in your face. That just doesn't really seem like good design, which is a lot like character unlocks. When you start the game, you can choose between 3 characters: the Berserk guy, the Tank guy, and the Blood Mage lady. You don't get to try them, and you don't get to re-roll your choice. Whoever you pick, you are stuck with. To unlock more characters, you have to collect character shards, which drop randomly and are for specific characters. In my experience, these drops are extremely stingy, and it would take literally forever to get them by random drops. There is, however, a type of mission that gives you a buttload of character shards. Assassination missions to kill a boss. But to get the assassination mission, you need a key made of fragments that you get from doing other side missions, okay? When you kill the boss, it drops around 20 shards for a specific character, always the same one. The first assassination mission drops Lucian shards, which is why I unlocked them first. The second assassination mission drops Kingwitch shards. Great. I already have Kingwitch, so this does almost nothing for me. You can use additional shards to get skins for characters you already have, but if Kingwitch plays like an out-of-tune guitar, then why would I want to farm more shards for him? I wanted to play this crossbow lady, Valeria, but it turns out that she is the final character unlock, so I'd basically have to play through the entire game with characters I might enjoy less to get to the one that I was like, yeah, I want to play that one. But 2 lanes. Warframe does the same thing. Yeah, well, in Warframe, your weapons are a big deal too. Your character kit isn't the only thing that changes up your gameplay. Speaking of changing up your character, let's talk character, ability, customization. So your abilities on a given character are pretty much set. What do you do to make them more unique? Maybe you could offer some slight alterations on how abilities work depending on your desired playstyle? Nope. How about plus 10% damage a bunch and then 2 forks where you get to choose between really cool stuff like plus 4 range or plus 15% spread on a gun ability? That's not good customization. To be fair though, on the Pagan Online Discord, they have acknowledged that this aspect of the game is lacking and they're going to be working on improving it. The other thing that makes your character any different is your gear. This game is pretty basic as far as I've seen, with gear with your usual strength, dexterity, intelligence, fortitude, stats, and elemental damage and resistance. Most of the better gear I've got in this game is from using the crafting system though. To craft things, you have to get a recipe for whatever you're trying to craft. The recipe says what the general stats are going to be on your desired item, with a chance of more random stats. To craft a recipe, you'll need crafting materials and a base item. The base item is kind of weird. It has to be a white common quality item of the type you are trying to make. White items come in a few qualities marked by a silver or gold star in the bottom left. This kind of makes the looting phase of the game strange because you want to pick up white items and then usually skip over green items and then pick up blue or higher items. At least for me. Why do we even have green then? You can't disenchant them, you just end up selling them, so I'm kinda confused. Anyways, the crafting materials are just found as loot on the ground or from these weird card packs that you get from daily challenges. Now this is not a free-to-play game and it does not have a cash shop, but the presentations of these craft material card packs is a bit odd. Once you have all the crap you need, you forge an item. If you're unhappy with the stats you got, you can use additional crafting materials to re-roll the stats as many times as you want. That's kinda neat. Lastly, I just want to point out some other oddities I found in the game that didn't really fit into any of my other categories. The shopkeeper you sell your trash items to doesn't sell anything aside from restocking your health potions. There's also a bizarre server connection waiting time when you go to sell an item, making a full inventory dump kinda tedious. From the hub, there's a tab for missions, but it only shows what missions you can do. You can't go on a mission from the Missions tab. You have to go to the Battlegate tab and then hit the Missions sub-tab in the Battlegate, which gives you a completely different looking UI from the Missions tab. Trying to compare stats sometimes is hard. If you equip an item, your stats either go green or red depending on whether if they got better or worse, but you have to equip the item to find out. There's no way to tell just by looking at the item. Sure, there's a bunch of pluses and minuses, but sometimes it's hard to see the overall picture until you just put that bitch on. Pagan Online is currently a single-player game. The multiplayer was included in their final closed tests, and apparently it was pretty rough, so they have disabled it for the time being with the full implementation as their highest current priority. Conclusion. I know it looks like I just kind of dumped on it, but this game is so close to being really good. There's just a few hiccups keeping it from hooking me for hours and hours to get better loot. And to be fair, a lot of the grievances have been addressed in a Reddit AMA with the devs, who said that they were going to be looking into fixing some of these things. Now they can say they're going to look at feedback all they want, but until things actually start changing, I'm gonna point my finger at them like, hey, I really do hope the game does improve and succeed. There aren't really any good WASD ARPGs that I know, and this game is going for something a little unique. The devs also said they would look into group content like raids. Devs, please, I would sell my soul for raid bosses in a non-MMO, thanks. I'm also completely ready for a game with potential to crush my soul again. So if you're interested in buying this game, by all means jump into it, but be prepared for a slightly unpolished experience, and also don't pick King Witch. That's pretty much all I got from my launch review of Pagan Online. I know I didn't really talk about the story, but I don't really have anything to say about it. It's kind of neat. It's got like Slavic mythology and stuff in it. But anyway, if you like this video, then do that thing with the thumb and the button and the bell. I got more reviews coming your way. Thanks. 2 Lainz. Out!